In 2014, Gustav Hasselskog was driving his 25-foot sport boat out to his family's summer house in the Swedish archipelago. Along the way, he realized that his small boat consumed 15 times more fuel per mile than his car. There must be a better way, he thought, some way to make this boat much more fuel efficient. That turned out to be the start of what became the world's first foiling electric boat company. There followed 10,000 hours of research, CAD modeling, engineering, and testing. After many trials and failures and 5 years of single-minded work, the company delivered its first boat, the C7, in 2019. Since that time, Candela has sold 32 more boats, mostly to Europeans, but 7 of them are in the U.S. The surprising thing to us about Candela is how many engineers are on the payroll. Of the company's 105 employees, about half are engineers. This stands in stark contrast to traditional boat builders, which usually have just a few. There's nothing new about hydrofoils. The Englishman Thomas Moy is generally credited with accidentally inventing the first hydrofoil in 1861 when he attached wings to a steamboat in the Surrey Canal. He wanted to observe the fluid dynamics for an airplane wing he was working on, and in the process, the wings raised the boat. But it was not until 1898 that the first efficient hydrofoil was designed by the Italian Enrico Forlanini. Here we see a successful test on Lake Maggiore. Alexander Graham Bell was bitten by the bug, and over 15 years in the first part of the 20th century, he built 4 hydrofoil boats, the fastest of which was powered by 2 airplane Liberty motors. His hydroplane went 71 miles per hour. In 1962, the first ocean-going hydrofoil boat, called the HS Denison, was built by the U.S. government on Long Island. The boat was powered by a jet engine, weighed over 200,000 pounds, and reportedly had a top speed of 60 knots. It was the forerunner of the Pegasus-class fast attack patrol boats, first launched in 1973, which had a top speed of 55 miles per hour. It carried cannons, torpedoes, and harpoon-guided missiles. Because this platform was so rock-steady when on foils, unlike a conventional ship at sea, its guns had excellent accuracy. It was used in the Vietnam War. From 1983 to 1993, it was employed by the U.S. Navy to interdict drug smugglers in the Caribbean and in the Gulf of Mexico. But because it burned 1,000 gallons an hour while on foils at top speed, the boats were turned into scrap. On the commercial side of things, the Russians have been building hydrofoil passenger ferries for decades, and they can be seen everywhere from St. Petersburg to St. Thomas. In May, we visited the Candela factory located in a suburb of Stockholm, Sweden. Their boats are built completely of carbon fiber, including the hull's skin, stringers, decks, seats, and just about everything else. Everything is hand-laid with epoxy, then painted. This is absolutely the most expensive way imaginable to build a small boat, but it is also the lightest way. The hulls are so light they can be lifted from the stern by one person. After a factory tour, we went down to the dock nearby for our first ride in a C7 bowrider. Inside we found 6 seats, all equipped with seat belts. The C7 draws its energy from a 40 kW lithium-ion battery feeding a single 55 kW electric motor. The motor directly turns a long shaft that reaches down to a bevel gear connected to a conventional prop. The pod has articulating wings with sensors. Max Karlgren, a member of Candela's marketing department, then took us for a demo ride in the C7.
So first of all, we're going to go in a straight line at around 5 knots. Because during takeoff, you want to go straight. So first you find a straight line, and then when you're ready, you just go full speed ahead, like this.
In order to get on plane quickly, the motor uses peak power, something that it can only do for about 30 seconds or so. As we gained speed, Max read out the speed.
15, 16, 17, and now the noise from the water disappears, and we're actually up flying.
Now we're off the water and flying on the foils in 9 seconds elapsed time.
So now we're foiling at 22 knots.
22 knots? Our hull is completely out of the water, the ride is rock solid, and we didn't feel a ripple. The boat was perfectly trimmed, even though there was 80 pounds more on our side of the boat. Then Max put the boat into a turn, and note that the boat leans slightly into it. Turns on foils are not sharp. Max made a broad, sweeping arc to port. The secret of Candela's ride is what is called the flight controller, much like that of a commercial airliner. Max has only 2 controls, the steering wheel and the throttle. Trimming the port and starboard foils and adjusting the stern wing are all handled by the black box. 2 ultrasonic sensors in the bow measure the wave height and duration. Yaw, roll, and pitch are monitored by the sensors, and the flight controller adjusts the foils accordingly 100 times per second, keeping the boat stable and on an even keel at all times. Note the 1-foot wave height from the wake of a small ferry, and watch the bow of the boat. We didn't feel a thing, no slamming or banging, just a smooth ride through a small wake. The folks at Candela have tested the C7 in all kinds of conditions, as can be seen in these video clips. The company says that the foils can keep the bottom out of the water until waves reach about 1 meter high. In rougher seas, the company advises owners to slow the boat down, use it as a conventional boat, and there the foils act as a stabilizing force. Once again, we went over some little waves, and this time we could hear one wave tip just kissing the bottom of the boat, but there was no jolt or bump. In this video clip made by Candela, we see the difference between the ride in the C7 and that of an aluminum boat going the same speed and a light chop. As you can see, the bow of the conventional boat is bobbing up and down, and the C7 flies along unbothered. Now look at the wake of the conventional boat. Imagine all of the energy it takes for that vessel to plow through the water, constantly pushing tons of it aside. Now look at the C7's trail, virtually no wake, and all we see is the cavitation bubbles in the water from its 4-bladed prop. Now Max demonstrates landing the boat by pulling back on the throttle.
If you want to, you can do the assisted landing. Then you just go to 0 throttle like this.
Okay.
Then the boat braces the nose a bit to get a nice smooth landing. Pretty much like an airplane lifting the nose a bit, so to get a nice angle when going down.
We were told that the boat uses as much energy going 5 knots as it does 22. So it is advantageous to keep the speed from 18 knots to 22 knots to maximize range. The boat can stay on its foils as low as 18 knots. For that reason, we tested the boat in the narrow speed band from 18 to 26 knots on reciprocal courses. The chart shows how many average kilowatt hours of electricity we used at each speed setting. Candela says that the C7's range is about 50 miles at the ideal speed with a full battery charge. Technology moves fast, and this fall Candela will be launching its C8, which promises to be a significant upgrade in finish work as well as being a cutty sport boat design. But most important, the factory is promising a quantum leap in performance, thanks largely to its remarkable torpedo-shaped C-pod. It houses 2 tandem-mounted 50-kilowatt permanent magnet electric motors, and they directly drive counter-rotating dual props. The builder promises the C8 will have a top speed of 30 knots and have 23% more range. But that's another story for another time. For Boat Test, I'm Jeff Hammond reporting.